Welcome to the Cortisol Coach Podcast. If you're exhausted, gaining weight, losing your hair, your anxiety is through the roof, or the depression and emotional overwhelm have completely consumed your life, or maybe you're not showing up as the wife and mom you want to be. You've spent years never feeling good enough, taking care of everyone else while you quietly fell apart. And your body has been keeping score of every single bit of it. The chronic stress, hormonal shifts, perimenopause, menopause, whatever season you're in, cortisol is making all of it worse. And until you heal the root, nothing changes. But this show here is about to change that. I'm your host, Christine Marie, Holy Spirit-led biblical mindset coach, and I have helped thousands of women heal their hormones and cortisol levels. Every week, I bring you leading experts, doctors, and coaches who will help you heal your body, mind, emotions, and your spirit so that you can step into every kingdom purpose that God has planned for your life. So go grab your cup of coffee and let's jump in. There is a woman listening to this right now who has become really, really good at holding it all together. She's the one that everyone leans on, the one who keeps going no matter what, and absolutely nobody knows how broken and empty she feels inside. She wakes up exhausted, she goes through the day, she takes care of everyone around her, then she goes to bed. She does it all over again. And if you asked her if she was depressed, I'm guessing she would say no. She would say, I'm just tired, just stressed, just busy, just a mom, just a wife, just somebody who has a lot going on right now. But what if tired and stressed and empty and disconnected and going through all of the motions? What if that is depression? And what if the woman who keeps everyone else afloat is quietly drowning? And what if nobody ever told her that her hormones were at the root of all of it? My guest today is Jessica Crespo, a physician assistant with nearly 26 years of clinical experience spanning some of the most dynamic, demanding environments in medicine: cardiology, emergency medicine, psychiatry, and over a decade in primary care. That combination is rare. Most providers specialize and then stay there, but Jessica has seen the full picture of what happens to a woman's body and mind when something goes wrong, which is exactly why she sees what so many others are missing. She is known for building deep, trusting relationships with her patients, creating a space where women finally feel heard, not rushed, not dismissed, and actually heard. But what makes Jessica truly unique is that she's not just a clinician. She's a woman who firsthand knows what it feels like to put everyone else first and then lose herself completely in the process. She has rebuilt her life from the ground up. And that journey lit a fire in her to help other women do the same. Jessica, I am so excited to welcome you to the Cortisol Coach Podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very, very honored to be here today.
Oh my gosh, the honor is mine, and I cannot wait for our listeners to hear everything that you have to share. But let's start with the woman you see in your practice, because I think most women over 40 would never describe themselves as depressed. So what are they actually saying when they come to you?
You are so correct when you say that. I think most women just feel like they're going through the normal day-to-day errands and things that they have to get done and just going through life, going through the motions. When I tell you, it was the same story over and over again of these women that would come in and complain of all the same symptoms. And they didn't think that they were depressed. But when we would go deeper into it and I would ask more of the important questions, it would come out that there was a degree of depression.
So what is depression? Because I'm guessing with a high functioning woman over 40, which truly describes our listeners, what does that look like?
I feel like so many women they're driven, just high functioning women that just do it all. You know, they run households, they work full-time jobs, they're constantly going and doing things for everyone else. And so I feel like they become numb and they just think it's normal to go about things that way. But what happens is when you typically look at depression, people look at it like, oh, in bed crying, can't get out, can't function, can't do that. But there's what I call a low grade mood, low grade depression, which is what affects a lot of women that don't realize it. And that looks as simple as being more irritable, snapping at the kids maybe more often, or your spouse. Sometimes it can be as simple as just not having as much patience as you once had. And then when you go deeper into it, it's difficulty focusing. It's feeling more anxious, less able to handle stress the way that you normally would. Things that you would normally be able to handle with no problem, all of a sudden you feel like you can't, almost like there's a loss of control over things.
What about the physical sides of depression that people don't talk about?
So, physical side of it is when you've ignored the emotional side to it. It starts your body's not able to process it anymore, so it starts to come out physically with things like headache. The number one thing I would see is a fatigue. A lot of women complain of just extreme fatigue, muscle, joint pain, feeling run down, always getting sick. Those are the type of physical complaints that I would hear of.
I've struggled with anxiety my whole life, but I've definitely experienced periods of depression as I've walked through hard situations in life. And I just remember feeling empty.
Yes, that is a very, very common symptom women would get. You feel lonely. You almost start to isolate just because things, you get invited to go out to dinner. You may say yes and be excited to go. And then last minute, you kind of change your mind and you end up canceling. So it's things like that. At the time, you're excited. You want to, but then when it comes to actual getting ready and going out, a lot of times you cancel plans. And a big one is feelings of guilt. That was a big one, I would say. Feeling like you're not a good enough mom, a good enough wife, let's say, and just being very hard on yourself.
I remember one thing for me is I noticed that the chores around the house started piling up. So it was not being able to push through the day, but then it was also more like I just didn't care because I was so sad and so empty.
Exactly. And part of that is the lack of motivation that you have. And that's all related. You start to lose motivation. Also, when you were once motivated and focused, you can get all these things done. But as you lose that motivation and you're not able to focus, that's when things kind of fall to the wayside.
So why do you think that high functioning women would miss these signs?
I think because high functioning women are used to just doing it. They're used to hustling. They're used to getting it done. They're used to pushing. They take responsibility for everyone. They put themselves last. They just go, 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 go. And they ignore it and say, I just have to try harder. I just have to do more. I just have to wake up earlier. I just have to do this. And so they just keep pushing.
I think that was it for me, especially, we fostered 77 kiddos in 10 years because
Wow.
there was no slow down moment for me. And
I don't know how you could. Wow.
I don't know how it all happened, but truly like how we made it through it, but truly like once we were no longer foster parents, that's when I stepped into that period of depression because when you are constantly going, you don't realize how tired you actually are.
Yeah, your body just crashed because you have cortisol that keeps pumping through you elevated. And that's what keeps you go, 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 going. And so when now you don't have the responsibilities and things slow down, your body crashes. Your cortisol, like it's not able to sustain anymore and you feel everything all at once.
I absolutely did. And I'm glad that you brought that up because that was the next question I wanted to ask you is this is not just a mental health conversation. This is a hormone conversation.
Absolutely.
And every part of our body is connected, but can you help us connect the dots in a way that our listeners are going to more easily understand, which is what's actually happening in a woman's body over 40 that might actually drive depression?
I'm so glad you brought that up because, when it comes to mental health, it has such a stigma. And what I really want to drive home today, my big message is it's not our fault because there are actually things that are changing in your body that's leading to this. And so things like estrogen and progesterone, those are it's not just reproductive hormone. They also play other roles with our body. For instance, estrogen. It supports things like serotonin and dopamine. These are two neurotransmitters that make us feel good. It makes us feel happy. So for estrogen, let's say, and this can be due to postpartum, it can be due to perimenopause, even when there's a change in our cycle. The week before a woman gets her menses, you start to feel that shift. And the reason why is because it's estrogen plays a huge role with supporting, like I said, the serotonin and dopamine. So if estrogen is low, then guess what happens? Your mood is down, your motivation is down, and that's when you become more emotional. The emotional stability changes. That's you have an increase in anxiety. You feel more irritable, just not yourself. As far as progesterone, that's the other hormone. That's what helps you feel relaxed. That's what helps calm you. So now if that's low, then what happens is you feel more on edge, and that's when you feel like you're not able to handle the things the way that you used to. So there's a direct link there.
And it's interesting because when I just had my blood work done recently, I didn't even realize I was in menopause. I thought I was in perimenopause. And then when I saw my lab work and my estrogen was basically had left the building, there was such a huge dramatic difference for me. Now that I'm on estrogen, I feel so different. And so I can truly see how just the hormonal shifts in a woman's body can make a huge difference on mental health.
Yeah, it really does. I would see it all the time. Women who are in, postmenopause, perimenopause, just coming in, that would be what they would say. I just feel off. I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself.
Something you said to me before we started this recording, I have not been able to stop thinking about it because not only have you studied depression and helped women navigate through depression, you've also lived it. Can you share with us a little bit more about your personal experience?
Absolutely. So this is something I've never shared. Only, a few close friends and family know about it. I've experienced it in two different ways. Being that high functioning, overachieving mom, I pushed and pushed for years, doing all the things and just pushing through. And it was years of working, paying the bills, doing the grocery shoppings, running to the kids' sports, doing everything. I ran myself ragged. I put myself last and made sure everyone else was good, but I never took care of myself. I thought it was a good thing to do. I thought it was a noble thing to do. In the end, I was a shell of myself and I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. Not realizing it at the time, I had a lot of these symptoms: extreme exhaustion, difficulty focusing, feeling anxious, feeling very lonely, at times very isolated, but they were mild, and I thought it was all normal. I said, this is part of just being a mom. Then in a different way was when my daughter was about 3 years old, I was pregnant, and I was pregnant with twins. Was about 9 weeks. And at first, of course, it's exciting, nervous. It was natural. I hadn't gone through treatments. It was a natural pregnancy. They were twins in the same sack. What the doctor explained was that I could have carried them up until the 38th, 39th week, and then I could lose them spontaneously. So it was a high risk pregnancy. And so when I had gone back for the follow-up visit, there was no heartbeat. So I had to schedule a D&C. So D&C was scheduled. And the day after, I crashed in such a hard way where I cried. I just felt so sad. And it felt like, okay, this is normal part of the loss that we just experienced. But it was bad. I couldn't get out of bed. It got to a really bad place. And what I realized it was when you get pregnant, your hormones they're doubling, tripling, they're increasing so rapidly in the beginning. And then when you have that D&C, your hormones, they just come down and you crash. So
Wow.
I said, wow, this is really such a big thing to experience, to go from such a high to just crash that way. And what I realized was it took about 6 months. My menses were not regular at all. And finally, when it came to the 6th month and I started to regulate, I was completely fine. My mood was completely back to normal.
I'm so thankful that you were transparent and open to share that. And I'm so sorry for such a huge loss. I think there's a lot of listeners who can connect with you on this. What for me hit me is I would imagine you would be so grief stricken after the loss of any child. But I wouldn't naturally think postpartum depression after a DNC. Is that normal that people wouldn't assume that?
I didn't assume it. It never dawned on me, and I don't know why. You think of postpartum after you deliver in a healthy baby, but I never looked at it as a postpartum because it's the same thing. It's your hormones. It's such a change. After you deliver the baby, your hormones start to decrease rapidly. And it's the same thing after a DNC. So again, I never considered that. So it was really, eye-opening for me to say, wow, like it was literally the next day.
And you think of the woman who just experienced the loss of her child, or maybe she is that woman who is the high-functioning mom and wife like you just talked about, because you've had several experiences with depression. And you think, well, I'm just sad. I'm just going to stay in bed. But what would you say to that woman right now who's listening to this and saying, it's fine, this will pass. I'm just going through a moment. I'm just going through a time. What would your encouragement be to her right now?
To not ignore the signs, really be open and honest with yourself. If you have support, talk to whoever that is, whether it's your spouse, parents, a sibling, friends. And for me, thank God I had the support of, my parents. They were there because you get into this negative loop of thinking and everything is negative and it's all linked. You don't feel good enough. You feel lonely. You feel like a burden. You feel you want to self isolate because you don't want to bother anyone. And so I would say don't ignore the signs and don't feel bad that you're feeling that because it's not your fault. It's important that once you recognize that it's a possibility, talk to someone, talk to your medical provider, start that conversation.
And I also feel like so often as women, for whatever reason, your thoughts get very dark.
Yes, very.
And if you are having thoughts that you wouldn't even repeat to your significant loved one, that's especially the point when you need to say, I need to take this bold step and I need to schedule a doctor's appointment, even though maybe I'm not caring about myself. I need to do this and see and find out what's actually going on.
I am so happy you brought that up. That is so important that people realize is that when you have those type of thoughts, that's part of the effects of the hormones that are not balanced.
Right.
And so again, it is not your fault. It is because these hormones are low. They're not balanced right now. So if you were to correct that, let's say I gave you that, if I can just snap my fingers and balance those levels and they were back to normal, that would go away. That feeling would go away.
It was interesting. My husband and I had a conversation actually last night, and he was asking me, we had a very significant event in our marriage, and he was asking me, he said, you seemed like you were different, like a different person after this happened. And he said, what do you think it was? Well, the difference was I was put on an SSRI. And I said it balanced me. For the first time in my life, the spiraling thoughts stopped. So I was a different person because my body was balanced. There's the other forms of depression that it's genetic or it's hereditary, or maybe you have genetic mutations that are causing long-term, lifelong depression where you need a medication help like I
Right.
did. I remember being a young child, even in my teenage years, that I just never felt quite at peace and at rest in my body, and I didn't know why. And so I think that that's the piece where there's such a big difference between when your body is balanced and who you are and when it's not.
Absolutely. So after I had the DNC and the next day I crashed, I tried to just give myself a little bit of time, but it was pretty bad. And so at that point I decided also to go on a medication, which was an SSRI. Within days, I felt so much better. And so it confirmed exactly what I was thinking, what happened. So once I got on that, it was about 6 months, like I said, because of my menses it was not regular. So about 6 months it took to finally get regular again. Once it got regular, I stopped the medication. I was fine. I felt I was back to myself without medicine.
That's awesome. Well, and then there's people like me, which I will be on medication for the rest of my life. And then there's people who just need assistance for maybe a short period of time or maybe a
Absolutely.
longer period.
And I talk about this often. There's no one size fits all. Everyone is so different. Again, like you had mentioned, there's genetics with this. There's other maybe medical issues you may have, medications you may be taking. It's important to just look at the whole picture. We do have medications and they can be life-saving. I am definitely not against medications. I took them myself and it helped. It helped me. I could function again. I can be there for my daughter, and be the mom I wanted to be. So there's a lot of options out there, figuring out what's best for you and doing that with your provider. You might not have to go on medication, but if you need it, there's nothing wrong with that. And you don't have to be on it lifelong. It can be a short period of time. There are treatments for hormone replacement, if that is something that's needed. If these symptoms are so severe where it's interfering with your quality of life, then that's something that you can look into as an option. There should be no judgment. This is your body, this is your life, and it's up to you to decide what is the best course. What do you feel comfortable with?
I love that. And so let's give the listeners a first step. So let's imagine she's listening to this. She's identifying with so many of these symptoms that you are describing or struggles. And she's thinking, okay, let me just have a conversation with my doctor. Or let me take the first step and schedule an appointment just to see if maybe this is truly what it is. What could she say to her doctor to start the conversation?
First, I would make sure to just keep it very focused. If this is your appointment, make sure that this is what you're focusing on, because there's a lot to cover when it comes to something like this.
Right.
It's not just a I have a sore throat type of thing. This is, you want to get your symptoms across so that they understand what you've been feeling. Make that list. Have that list of everything that you've been feeling and let the doctor know. Let them know what type of stress that you have. It could be, let's say, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, or the stress of being a mom, a working mom, doing things, just life. Let them know what is behind the scenes. And then from there, I would definitely get at least a baseline set of blood work just to rule out anything else. Because, for example, something like an underactive thyroid, known as hypothyroidism, can sometimes give you symptoms of depression. So if you have an underactive thyroid, that can be corrected, and then those symptoms can be corrected as well, and you can feel better. So I would definitely go in there with a list of everything you've been feeling. A request if you can be sent for a full, thorough set of blood work.
I love that. So one thing that you had mentioned that you were going to give the listeners today was a checklist of symptoms so that they could fill out the sheet and take it to their doctor just to begin the conversation. And I will include Jessica's information on how you can connect with her in the show notes, because hopefully that can make the conversation a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
So, Jessica, if you were to say one thing to the woman who listened to this whole episode and is still thinking, I'm probably just fine, what would you say to her?
I would say sit down with yourself, take some alone time, and really go through the symptoms. If you feel irritable, if you feel like you snap at the kids a lot, that you don't have too much patience, that, for things that you used to, if you're feeling exhausted, look at those mild type of symptoms. And if you're feeling anything, then maybe talk to your family too, because a lot of times people around us notice a lot better than we can actually recognize. And that's a big one. We think we're doing good. We think we're pushing along. We think we're doing all the things. But believe it or not, people pick up on your moods, your personalities, on the things that they're seeing. They know you. And so if there's any kind of change, they're going to recognize it. So if you have that conversation, say, hey, talk to let's say your spouse, do you feel like I've been different the last couple of months or year, whatever it is? And you may be surprised to find, what, I'm glad you brought this up, but you haven't seen yourself, in last couple of months. You haven't been yourself in, so many years, however time, it is. But they can help you realize that maybe you're not doing such a great job as what you realize,
That is so great. I know for me, especially, I had asked my husband and I had asked my kids, because especially the people who are living in the house with you,
Exactly.
they're picking up on it.
Exactly.
And especially for me, knowing that if I'm not being the best possible mom that God intended me to be, I wanted to reach out. And there's a huge difference. And I'll just be really honest. I was completely against medication. So when my doctor said, let's try a medication, I wasn't comfortable with it. But now I'm at the point that I say, I don't like the version of me without the medication because I feel peaceful in my body now. And so if that's the piece, but I didn't know anything different beforehand.
Right. Right. And you get and that's so common. And you don't have to take medication. There's other ways around it, to get your mood up. But some people do need it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of people that are against it. And like I said, you don't have to take medications, but you have to look at the quality of your life. If you're barely functioning, then you have to really consider that, because you don't have to suffer. You don't have to go through life being so depressed where you're not even, you're not living.
I love that. And you are so right. There's so many amazing things that you can do for your mental health. For me, I know I like to walk outside for 45 minutes every single night after dinner because that helps with my mental health tremendously. So there's a lot of options. I know you ride your bicycle.
Yes. Yes.
Get in the sunshine. There's so
Yes.
many things you can do that
Yeah.
will help, and especially sleep, good quality sleep, and maybe it's sleep hygiene before bed every
Yes.
night. So that's
Yes.
really, you don't have to go to your doctor necessarily to have a medication conversation, but connect with Jessica, get her checklist, work through the questions, ask your family if you have a spouse or loved ones that you can have them look at the list if this is something that's concerning to you. Because, friend, you were meant to live the most incredible life, and God has big plans for you. So if there was something in this episode that made you pause, I really want you to pay attention to that. Because God did not design you to disappear. He did not call you to pour from an empty cup until there was nothing left of you. He called you to be whole. He called you to be present. You matter. Your health matters. And asking for help is not weakness. If Jessica's checklist resonated with you, I want you to head over to her Facebook page and connect with her to get that. It is the first step that you can walk through to really take a look at, is depression possibly affecting me? The link is in the show notes, and I'll see you later. Friend, I am so thankful that you were here today. I pray this episode blessed you big time. And if it did, would you do me a favor and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts? It helps more women just like you find the show, and it may be the very reason that somebody else gets the answers that they need. I would also love to connect with you personally on Instagram. You can find me by searching Cortisol_Coach. That's where I show up every single day. And send me a DM. I would love to connect with you. I'll see you next time.